It's the next day here in the Pell's Gate Gallery, and we have a lot to achieve in a very short amount of time. If you remember in the last video, we came back from Lakewood Village. We found that somebody had given us some poison chocolates and a card, but luckily before we ate them, we actually found that somebody else had given us a warning not to eat them. So after we found the chocolates, we went and found the source of the chocolates and who had bought them, which was Solomon White. So at that point, we have our murderer, don't we? Because we know he was stalking Hannah. We know he bought the chocolates. We know that yeah, he was obsessed with poor Hannah, who's still hanging in here in the aquarium. And we know that he bought the chocolates, and the chocolates are poisoned and given to us, so it all falls into place, doesn't it? Solomon is the murderer. And we also know that Hannah said that Solomon was seen in the curator's office, actually running out of the curator's office where the security alarms are on the night of the theft. So it all falls into place, doesn't it? Everything makes sense. We've got our murderer. Just one slight problem. That's Solomon. Yesterday, Solomon was murdered. So we did an investigation on him and found that was definitely not suicide. In one hand, he had a few hairs, dirty blonde in color, that we assume were torn from the head of his attacker. His shoes had scuffs on them, like he'd been dragged a long way on the heels. And his hand showed signs that he had put up a struggle. So somebody killed Solomon. So our whole theory about him being the murderer falls apart. Now, if you recall, at the end of the video, we talked to Bronwyn, who suggested we search Solomon's office, see if there's any kind of indication as to who could have possibly murdered him. So that is what we're going to start with today, and we've got a lot to get through today. We may or may not complete it all within this video. Ah, there's a letter immediately. This note is written entirely in Daedric, but it could be very important. Maybe the curator knows someone who speaks Daedric and can translate. So let's take that with us. That's the next clue, to take this note to the curator. If you've been watching these videos from the beginning, you will probably recall Artemis, when asked about Solomon White, said that he could speak and write fluent Daedric. And that is a very rare skill. So Solomon, of course, is dead, but he's obviously written this letter in Daedric, perhaps hoping that the murderer would not be able to translate it. So the next thing we need to do is track down the curator, who'll probably be in her office, I would imagine. Let me just check the time. It's 12:08 p.m. I'm hoping she's not on lunch. So we thought we had it all figured out there. It all slotted nicely into place. Solomon was the thief and the murderer. Killed his beloved Hannah because he was obsessed with her and she said no too many times. Come on, curator. Okay, well, I know exactly where I should be able to find her, which is in the atrium of the gallery. And I shall wait there for her, because we cannot proceed.
Any time now.
Let's ask you about
please. Solomon.
It is shocking. I just can't believe anyone could do that.
Bye.
You can ask all the stuff about any of these major events in the gallery. Now, I need to find this curator because she'll know somebody who can speak Daedric, so I'm just going to wait an hour or two. And hope. Yes, there is the lady herself, Madame.
Well met.
Know anyone who can read this note? Daedric. Solomon was the only one I knew for sure could speak Daedric. It's a very difficult language to learn. But, of course, a Dremora would be able to. There's only one place you might be able to find a Dremora in Pell's Gate, and what is that? The Cloak and Dagger Inn. That place is notorious for its clientele. You could go and see if there are any Dremora. It could be dangerous, though. But it would be worth it if this note can tell us anything about who killed Solomon. Right, that is our next move. Thank you. And we're going to head straight to the Cloak and Dagger Tavern, which is the most notorious tavern in Pell's Gate. And like the curator just said, actually, its clientele is a varied clientele. Not a very upper class clientele. Definitely not the Royal Hotel class clientele, I would think. The Royal Hotel being there. But the Cloak and Dagger is located down a back alley here. Right here. So let's head straight in. This is one grungy place, and of course there's a secret access down to Elm Street through the closet. But I went through all of that when I did a walk around of Pell's Gate itself. Oh,
what do you want?
Tell me, Pell's Gate. Mind what you says and what you does and you'll survive. What do you do? Yeah, that's disgusting. Right, we're looking for a Dremora. Are you a Dremora? You kind of look like... No, you're human. These two ladies here. Okay, you're a Dremora. And you're a Dremora.
Be quick about it, mortal.
Let's get straight to the point. We're not trying to chat up a Dremora here. Can you translate this note? Very well, I will look at your note, mortal. It says, I fear for my life, so I have hidden a full confession in my grave. Sounds quite sensible to me. Trailus, where would you hide your confession? He's asking this guy. I'm not going to do a Dremora voice. I would have a sore throat for the rest of the day. Right, so the clue is, I fear for my life, I have hidden a full confession in my grave. If you recall, Solomon is the head of the creature displays, or was the head of the creature displays. Hidden in my grave. Well, Solomon's doesn't have a grave, does he? Because he's hanging up in the Oblivion display right now. Oh, he's hanging around the Oblivion display. Yes, I know. Terrible joke. So, I fear for my life. I've hidden a full confession in my grave. There's only one place that could be. Solomon's the head of the creature displays. We have the lovely forest display. The domestic display. What has now become Solomon's grave, but isn't the grave he's referring to, the Oblivion display. But right through here, we have the undead display. And this is the only place in the gallery where there even are graves. So it's quite logical that Solomon is talking about somewhere in here. So the first thing to do is to check all the graves. And see if there's a... Aha! Here lies Solomon White. There is something freshly buried at the base of this tombstone. Carefully you dig into the soil and uncover what looks like a note. I think we just found Solomon's confession, and I think we'll go somewhere... No, actually, we'll stand right in front of Solomon and read his confession and reflect on his sad life. This is going to be a long read, and everything's going to make sense here. Confession of Solomon White. If you're reading this, then I am dead. He will have killed me just like he killed Hannah. But I will have a last laugh as I tell the truth about the missing Septim Crown and the murder of my beloved Hannah Phelan. So Solomon did not kill Hannah Phelan. It all started one night when I was working late. I was on my way to Hannah's office to once again try to make her understand my love for her. As I was walking down the hallway, I saw him come out of the Royal Jewels display, none other than Darren Oslin. He stopped dead when he saw me. As we both know, none of the staff were allowed in that area after closing. I asked him what he was doing there, and he blustered something about looking for Margaret. But of course I was suspicious Margaret was not in that night. I continued on, but from that day I could feel Darren watching me closely, listening to everything I said. One day he came into my office. He seemed agitated, pacing around and fidgeting with items on the shelves. He asked me about my financial status, where I saw myself being in a few years. I told him I had a few financial problems, a few gambling debts I was concerned about. Then he started, "Why should we spend our lives working so hard for such a pittance when others are rich and free?" He was so persuasive, so focused and intent. "Why should we not live lives of luxury?" he said. "Why toil so hard until we die from old age? Why, when there were such riches at our fingertips?" Okay, it's starting to make sense now. He made it sound so easy. He had a plan. It couldn't fail. We could steal the crown and hide it until the heat was off. No one would suspect us, especially if we just continued our jobs until the time was right. At first I wasn't sure, but he had it all figured out. We would steal the Septim Crown, hide it somewhere in the gallery that no one would ever think to look, and in a year we would retrieve it, sell it, and split the proceeds equally. After all, there are places in the gallery that only we knew of. It couldn't fail. We would be rich men, set for life. Right, so it was Solomon and Darren. I thought on it while he paced restlessly around my office waiting for my answer. Then I thought of Hannah, my lovely, beautiful, innocent Hannah. If I were a wealthy man, she would notice me. She would return my love and become my wife, and I would lavish my wealth on her. My sweet, delicate Hannah. My mind was made. It was worth the risk, and so I told Darren that I would be part of his plan. That was a start. From there we planned and strategized every night, working late into the small hours of the morning. Margaret must have thought we were truly dedicated to the job. If you recall, she said Solomon and Darren were really hard-working sorts. But if she had only known the truth. We watched all the staff and guards closely. At every opportune moment, we gathered information on the security systems. One night, Darren managed to locate the keys to the rooms where the security systems were. He quickly took the keys to a fence down on Elm Street and had copies made. If you recall, the janitor said that somebody from the gallery had had a key made down in the fence shop down on Elm Street. Then returned the originals before they were missed. It all went perfectly according to plan. Right, the agreed night for the theft came. All the staff and guards were exactly where we knew they would be at the right time. I used the copied keys to get into the security rooms and disabled the alarm. Darren crept into the Royal Jewels display. He had exactly 3 minutes to steal the crown and be back in his office before I had to reactivate the alarms. He replaced the crown with a copy we had purchased some months before from one of the gift shops. If you recall, the guy in the gift shop who runs a gift shop said that first Artemis, but he also said that Darren had bought a copy of the Septim Crown as well. And we asked Darren, and Darren said he bought it for his niece. And we could verify that was Solomon. So we went to Solomon and asked Solomon, tripped him up, and said that Darren bought it for his nephew. And Solomon said yes, he did. And I met the little boy, and the little boy was really happy with it. So he was clearly lying. So where was I? Okay. I turned the alarm back on, careful to ensure nothing was out of place, and ran back to my office, relocking the doors behind me. If you recall, Hannah said that she saw Solomon exit the curator's office and run back into the gallery on the night of the theft. So Darren turned up a few minutes later. When I asked him where the crown was, he told me it was best I didn't know. When I pressed him about its location, he only laughed and said it was sleeping with the fishes. There's our big clue as to where the crown is. The theft was discovered the next morning when Margaret did her usual rounds. The woman doesn't miss a thing and spotted the fake crown immediately. The alarm was raised, but even though they searched the gallery from top to bottom, they didn't find the crown, just like Darren said. Too late though, I have learned the true nature of my partner in crime. The truth is that I now don't believe he ever intended to split the proceeds from the crown. Too late I realized that I was just a tool for him to use. He needed a second person to turn the alarms on and off, and that was me. I had no idea until only recently. I was going to my darling Hannah's office with some pretense of looking for a book, but the truth was that I longed to see her beautiful face. I stopped when I heard raised voices from inside. Curious, I pressed my ear to the door, and what I heard shocked me to my core. I recognized Darren's voice, but the tone of it chilled me. I told you once before that if I ever heard of you with another man, I would have to kill you. You are the only man I love, she protested. I would hate to think that you were lying to me. The door flew open and Darren stalked out. I tried to make an excuse for my presence right outside the door, but he knew I had heard. From the way he looked at me, I knew he knew. He stalked off and I returned to my office. I had not known that Darren had seduced my beloved innocent Hannah. He had always been cold towards her, never showing any sign of attraction. How could she allow herself to be swayed by him? That very day, someone murdered Hannah, and I knew the moment I heard the news that it could only have been Darren. Mad with grief, I confronted him in his office. At first he denied it, but when I pressed him about it, he admitted it, telling me no one would believe a weak fool like me, and if I told a soul, he would reveal my part in the robbery. We would both hang. I asked him if the deal with the crown was still on, and he said it was. We were partners in crime, bound together and to silence by that, but something in his eyes made me distrust. I don't think he will let me live long enough to retrieve the crown. Since then, I have played the part of the loyal partner in crime, but I burn with hatred for my beloved Hannah's killer. He knows. He enjoys my rage and hatred, and he goads me, tells me lies about the woman I cherished. He tells me that she was a mere whore from Elm Street. Lies to sully her reputation and her memory. She was actually a whore from Elm Street, but he thinks I am weak and could not strike against him, and he is right. I fear for my life. I see the madness in his eyes. I know he will kill me if he even suspects I might break our pact, so I have done what he has told me to do, though it sickens me to the depth of my soul. He came into my office and told me to go and buy some chocolates and a card. I asked him why, and he said it was time to take care of that nuisance of a secretary, that's us, that has been asking questions about the crown and snooping around. I didn't press the issue any further, but went and purchased the chocolates and a card. When I returned, Darren came into my office, looked at the chocolates, and took a small vial out of his pocket. He then sprinkled some of the contents of the vial over each chocolate. He then took the card and the chocolates and turned towards the door. He looked back briefly at me, placed a finger to his lips and made a shh sound, followed by a maniacal grin. With that he left, and I was left in no doubt as to what he planned to do. I was distraught. I couldn't believe it. I was party to murder. Quickly I jotted down a note warning the secretary not to eat the chocolates. Then I quietly headed over to the secretary's office. When I entered, I saw the chocolates on the table, thankfully as yet untouched. I placed the note in the pigeonhole, praying to Akatosh that the secretary would find the note before touching the chocolates, and that Darren would not find the note at all. When I reached my office, Darren was there. He quizzed me about where I'd been, and I told him I had just been to the lavatory. I don't think he believed me. If he had found out what I had done, he would kill me. Of that I have no doubt. But I couldn't let another innocent person die. I just couldn't. He left, seemingly unconvinced. So I am now here in my office writing this confession so that if I am murdered, Darren will be exposed and hanged. Justice for my beloved Hannah and for me. If the worst does happen, God's help us survive. Solomon White. We have our thief and we have our murderer. But we also have run out of time. Well, we got an hour yet, but I think what we will do at this point, we can't just take the confession to the curator because she said she needs the crown and the confession. So what we will do is I will go spend another cozy night at the Roaming Spirits Inn, return first thing in the morning, and when the staff are out having lunch, we will search and see if we can find the crown itself. And then we will have the crown, our proof, in the form of the hairs torn from Solomon tore from Darren's head, and Solomon's confession, and that should be enough to close this whole affair and get the murderer hanged. So at this point, I'm going to head off back to the Roaming Spirits Inn, and I'll see you in the next video.